This is a video about the current state of Taric in the current patch, the current meta, and also how to actually read the Mobafire guide, how to understand it, because some people seem to have issues. So I'm just going to kind of have my things of what to go over and just walk you through it. First, I'm streaming this video, so if you're on stream, you've already seen this, but you know, you can come over, and in fact, if anytime I'm live and you're on the guide, it will show you, which is pretty cool. But let's just start with runes. So the biggest thing I'm seeing right now is people are struggling to figure out when to go PTA versus when to go lethal. And the answer is pretty simple. If you are new to the game, if you're new to playing Taric, you should be running PTA over lethal. Lethal is super effective because you can use the increased attack speed to heal yourself and deal damage faster, and the current tier in the game allows you to have plenty of mana to do that. The issue is the increased attack speed will be just too much for new players to be able to handle Taric's passive and attack speed at the same time. So if you're new, just run PTA. But when are they effective? When do you actually run these things? And when do you run like some of these other runes, right? Glacial is basically anytime they're ranged. If you have trouble getting near them, Glacial is great. And also Predator is great for that too. So if you want to be more of a scaling, farming, a gank here and there, wait for team fights and be effective in team fights, Glacial is the way to go. I think it's very consistent, other than, hey, if you can't land your stun on the target, then you shouldn't be going Glacial, because just like Aftershock, you need to land your stun in order to proc Glacial. If you're not landing your stun, then it's useless, right? And maybe if you're having trouble landing stun or you're having troubles getting close to them, maybe a Predator spam ganking kind of build is better. I've tried this with the one that gives you movement speed out of combat, and also going Celerity Water Walking. I kind of like that version a little bit better than this, but you can go, just like anything, you can go any version of these runes, whatever you want. Just whatever is actually working for you is going to be best. And Flash versus Ghost, if you're running Glacial, you probably should run Flash. And if you're running Lethal or PTA, you should probably be running Ghost. The reason for this is very simple. If you need to use your autos to be effective, then making sure that you have the movement speed to catch them in auto is going to be the most important. If you need to land your stun, having Flash so that you can blink to an area is going to be the most effective, so that way you're ensuring that you're landing your stun. The only issue is, like, what overwrites each other is usually if they have walls, cages, things like Pike are where you need to immediately avoid it. Flash is going to be better. In some of those cases, you might think you should go Ghost, just to get over that stuff. And also, I should have said this at the beginning, but there are notes on all these things. People who look at the guide are like, oh, I scrolled down to the bottom and I read all this, but that doesn't really tell me anything. And it's because all of the information is in these little notes things right here. This is basically verbally saying everything that's in here. So yeah, let's just keep going into it. I guess I have this as a recommendation because it's generally good. It could work into a lot of different comps, but it's not like the one build, one all Taric jungle build, because you can't do that. All right, I've done tons of testing of different mythics, and more or less still, just like last season, Frozen Heart Change is the best combo. If they have 3 AD champions and they have 1 AP champ and plus a support, then Frozen Heart Chains is the best. You have Frozen Heart, which is gonna reduce your damage against those 3 AD targets, and then Chains for the AP target to heavily reduce the damage they're dealing, and Anthema's Chains health makes up for Frozen Heart's lack of health, and they work extremely well together, and then you can just tag on any kind of mythic you want. You can go Frozen Heart and Anthema's Shrelias, and Frozen Heart and Anthema's Moonstone, or Even Shroud, or anything you want. Usually I'm liking these supportive mythics better as a third item because they're just cheaper and you want to hit the power spike fast once you have this complete, but I guess that's up to anyone. You could basically go anything you want with these two. Okay, and now let's say they don't have 3 AD 1 AP, and they're like, they're really balanced. They have 2 AP 2 AD and a support. That's one or the other, right? This is where you start going to the other builds. Shrelias, if they are fast, clearly is good, right? You have to chase them down. Shirelli is Deadman, Shirelli is Force of Nature. You could go Shirelli is Frozen Heart, right? Shirelli's is the same. You're fast, and you're fast, your team is fast, you can engage, you can disengage, do all that really, really quickly. Moonstone is kind of the same. Basically, the situations where you want to build Moonstone or Divine or Gore are really, really similar. You build all of these in the case of fights are going to last a really long time. And the main thing between them is like, when do I go Gore versus when do I go Divine versus when do I go Moon? It's just basically this. If they have high HP and they have a lot of tanks, Divine is best. It heals you based on the max HP of the enemy, which means that the more tanks they have, the better Divine is. Gore is especially good because it gives you a lot of flat HP and Omnivamp. So if you're facing true damage targets, something like Master Yi, Set, Gwen, whatever, anything that does flat, and I mean flat true damage, you want to be stacking HP. Now, if it's Vayne or Lilia or Fiora, that is max HP based true damage, which means that you're not going to want HP. You're going to want the reverse of that. You're going to want either healing or resist, right? Resist isn't really going to help you, but something like Frozen Heart versus Vayne is going to stop the attack speed of Vayne, so she'll auto less and she'll deal less true damage, right? And Moonstone, it's the same kind of thing. Moonstone you can run. Also, I haven't mentioned which runes you can run with this. Moonstone Lethal is actually kind of secret OP, because once you ramp the attack speed with Moon, and, of course, the Moonstone ramp is going to be the same, you will heal insanely fast with Moonstone Lethal. And so that's a great option. I have, like, Moonstone Redem, but of course you could go Frozen Heart Moon, or you could go, Moon and Force of Nature or whatever, right? The only time you're really rushing a legendary versus when you're rushing a mythic is usually if it's Frozen Heart. If it's Frozen Heart, rush the mythic. If it's not Frozen Heart, if it's Frozen Heart, rush the legendary Frozen Heart. If you can't build Frozen Heart for whatever reason, usually pick up a Longsword or Doran's Blade to clear fast, and then pick up your mythic first, and then build whatever you want after that. The other builds that I have down here are weaker for whatever reason, and I'll go into why. Even Shroud is good. It's good on any champion, I think, or like any CC, like, Warden support, right? They nerfed it, so I'm thinking that it's just going to be better if you have a Leona to just let the Leona build it or whatever. It's not like it's so powerful that you need to rush it. It is good and can be built, and works really well with PTA and Abyssal because they stack. I went and tested this. PTA and Even Shroud's additional damage that they deal stacks with each other. So they're going to stack with your team's damage too. So if you really want to try Even Shroud out, try these two together and PTA, and your team is going to do a ridiculous amount of damage to whoever it is you're attacking. Frozen Heart Force of Nature is really good if they have that 3 AD, 1 AP mid like combo like with Frozen Heart Chains, but the difference is that they have like a Brand support or a Zerathor support or some support that's going to be dealing a lot of AP damage. That's when this build is going to be really good to go. So basically, if their support has lots of AP damage, then consider this. I haven't done much testing with Stride, but I can imagine Stride is really good just like in general. It's probably another like a jack of all trades build where you can slow them with Stride, and previously during the second half of season 11 you didn't want to go Glacial with Stride because of the fact that it didn't give a dash anymore, so it wasn't really worth it. But now that it just procs off of your stun, you could hypothetically go up to them, slow them with Stride Breaker, and then use that slow to land your stun, and so it would be super effective with Glacial where you'd have tons and tons of slows, right? It probably is actually pretty good. And here's the issues I'm having with these three items here. So Gale Force hasn't become inherently weaker. It's more that the strategy of picking up an early Noon Quiver, clearing really fast into building the Gale Force for the dash later is not weak because of Gale Force being weak or like Zonia's Gale being weak. It's weak because of the bounty system. The current bounty system actually punishes people who farm heavily, because realistically, if you take the time to permanent farm, you're going to have a ton of gold, right? And your team is going to be weaker because you didn't gank them because you were perma farming. And since you have that gold, your team is going to have a harder time proccing bounties on the enemy turrets while you're losing. Plus, if your team's ahead, you're going to have so much gold that it's going to be even easier for the enemy team to get bounties on things that they need, right? So, like, it used to be really good to just, like, in matchups where you couldn't do it, pick up an early noon quiver and just farm as fast as possible. But I'm not sure that that's the best strategy. It's almost more effective to have, like, economic depression strategy where you just have lots of very little gold. You know, you have no gold at all, and you know, because of you having no gold, your team can easily get bounties or deny enemy bounties with that. And when it comes to these items, Frostfire, Chemtank, and Sunfire as well, I just think that going these items on Taric are bad for one reason or the other. One, Frostfire was very good at the beginning of the season, but they immediately nerfed it into the ground. They nerfed it so hard they even removed the HP scaling on the item. Early on in preseason, we were doing Frostfire Gauntlet Titanic builds. I just don't think it's worth it anymore because of the HP like scaling being lost off of Frostfire. So it's still viable, but not really as good. And Chemtank, I'll mention, as always, there is a Korean Taric jungler. This guy's crazy. He plays everything from Taric top or Khan top. He's crazy. Regardless, he rushes Chemtank first, playing Taric jungler, and he does this in Korean Challenger. Now, why does he do this? He does this because it's super effective as a single item. It is a single item that is very effective. But if you are scaling, if you're in the, if you're in low elo, where, games are going to last anywhere from 25 to 30, 35 minutes, this isn't going to be effective because he is looking to win the game from like 5 minutes. He wants to win off of like the 10, 15 minute power spike. Now, even with Shirelias, right? Like Shirelias is good, and I think that buying Shirelias is still really good for early game, but I'm still playing, like, if you're building Shirelias, you will be effective later as well. You can look at there was a glacial video I did at the end of last season, and there's some graphs on there that'll kind of explain more on why Chemtank is good, really good early and then falls off, and why Shirelias is pretty good early and then it, continues to be good. Has a lot to do with the shred in the game, right? Where, yes, this is really good, but, it gives you this magic resistant armor that can easily be shred by Void Staff or Lord Dominic's or Cleaver or whatever it might be in the late game. And obviously Shirley's helps your team. And the other part of Turbo Chemtank that I don't like is also why people in low elo shouldn't build it. Because if you're new to Taric, you have to stack this item by moving around. If you move, like if you accidentally wiggle like your champion, you'll get like 8 stacks of the 100 it needs to proc the Turbo Chemtank passive. Now, if you're autoing, it gives you 5, right? And Taric is a champion that doesn't actually move that much. He's constantly CCing himself. Plus, he stands still like a lot of the time. So he's just gonna E auto, W auto, Q auto spam. And if you're not kiting while you're doing that and you're building Turbo Chemtank, you are just totally wasting the item. If you are building Turbo Chemtank, you must, and I mean you must, get good at ability auto, movement auto, ability auto, movement auto. Because if you don't, then you're just going to not clear as fast, you're not going to deal damage as fast in fights, and that's just going to make you less effective. And I have Eclipse here. I think Eclipse could potentially be good, probably for like a lethal or PTA early game spike where it gives you the Omni Vamp and you have a lot of flat AD to spike early, and it's just kind of the same thing as Gore Drinker, but I think if you're looking to go Eclipse, you might as well go Gore. But it is really nice that it gives you that movement speed, so it is somewhat viable. And the rest I have in here for whatever reason, right? Where Sunfire has the same issue with other tank mythics, and Kraken has the same issue with Gale, where camp timers aren't as fast, and you're being punished by the bounty system to heavily farm, and I guess Trinity just doesn't feel worth it. It's such a late power spike. Imperial's kind of cheesy, and some people just meme the rocket belt. And I tried Everfrost. I tried Everfrost and Crown. I tested them to see, oh, hey, they have mana built into their mythics. Maybe that means they're good with the tier items. But realistically, the tier items aren't even, like, they don't scale off of mana that well. And, like, even Fimble scales a little bit better, but it's, I'll talk about Fimbulwinter in a bit versus Seraphs and why I think Seraphs is now better. But it's just not worth it to go these mana mythics just so you can try to stack with Seraphs or Fimble. And now just going right into it, right? The legendaries. Seraphs. This item used to cost, I'm pretty sure it was 3,000 gold, right? And it's now 2,600. So now these two items are the exact same. They are the exact same in, they're the exact same in price, right? So what's the main difference between these items? Okay, well, this one gives 80 AP, and 250 health in the mana, and this one gives 400 health, and then it gives ability haste. But it's weird because they have these unique passives in that give, like, this one gives bonus health, so that's like the health from here, and then this one gives ability haste, and that's like the ability haste from here. So they basically like just completely ignore that. They both give ability haste and they both give health, right? The main difference is that Seraphs gives 80 AP, while Fimbulwinter gives 400 health, right? So if you look, it's like, okay, well, that's 150 health difference, right? And then on top of that, there is an 8% of max mana build. So what is that? Another 150, maybe 200. So the difference is going to be like 350 HP around. You're going to get extra from Fimble than you are going to get from Seraphs. In exchange for that 300 to 350 HP, you're going to get 80 AP. 80 AP. That is a lot of AP. That is a ton. If you are healing with your Q and you're dealing damage with your E constantly, that is going to matter. Plus, you could argue, the Q has HP scaling as well, but it's not nearly as much as what this 80 AP is going to do, right? And then on top of that, you compare the passives to each other. Heal for 35% of mana spent up to, a certain number, which increases based on ability power, which you're gonna already cap based on just one AP item. You don't have to worry about that like statistic. Basically, you are going to heal yourself every time you press Q, W, E, R, all of it. Anytime you spend mana, that takes that mana and it spits it into HP instantly. Fimble will give you a shield based on if you immobilize or slow someone, right? So if you can actually immobilize or slow someone, just like Glacial, you need to actually land your stun, or else this will not do anything for you. If you're not landing your stun, if you don't have red buff, if you don't, have Dead Man's Plate, this item won't proc, so you must be landing your stun to use it, right? And the shield it gives is honestly not that impressive. Yes, it doubles it's like not doubles, but almost doubles if there's more than one enemy champion, but still, that's like 1 W or 2 W's worth, and it goes on an 8-second cooldown. 8 seconds. And on top of going on an 8-second cooldown, it uses the mana that it actually consumes the mana that it uses to create that shield. On top of all of that, right, you could just look at Seraphs and say, oh, your Qs are going to be better, your E's are going to be better, you're going to heal better and heal more consistently. Like, imagine more like DPS healing versus burst shielding, right? This is better. If the fight is gonna last more than 2 seconds, then Seraphs is better, right? If the fight is gonna be over in 1 second, you're gonna die instantly. I suppose the shield could be useful, right? But if there are gonna be any extended fights at all, Seraphs is always gonna be better for that reason. So I've completely stopped building Fimble, even in cases where I'm looking at them and I'm like, okay, they're full true damage. Maybe I could benefit from the extra 300 health, but still, it's not worth it. You're going to heal yourself and your team better with Seraphs. So there's no reason to go Fimble at this point versus Seraphs. Feel free to argue with me on that if you find something different, but I've just explained it all. So now I can finally get past that and get into armor. Frozen Heart. Take it most of the time. Most enemies you take Frozen Heart. The times you don't take Frozen Heart are specifically Olaf, Master Yi, and if they are an AD person that is, I guess like on the lower side where they're like, oh, you could like an Akshan will go Wit's End, or some of these other picks where it's like they have like 3 or 4 AP and you don't want that much armor, then don't go it. Just go the Mythic first. But most of the time, Frozen Heart's gonna be best. Right, in those times where you're facing Olaf, you're facing Yi, you're facing somebody who does true damage that you don't think Frozen Heart's going to be effective. Thornmail's okay. Bramble got hard nerfed, so this item is actually terrible until you complete it fully. That's something to remember. Zhonya's is always really interesting to use because if they have high burst like Fiddlesticks, you can just R and then Hourglass, and then you will guarantee your survival for the next 5 seconds, right? Because 2.5 seconds of Zonia's state, and then the R lands, and then that's another 2.5 if you do it like right after the other. Zonia's is really good against burst, and that's kind of why I like the Gale Zonia's build, because you know, with Gale you don't have the gold to buy tankiness early, so this allows you to have like mock tankiness, which is kind of nice. But yeah, Deadman's I feel like is coming back because Glacial doesn't have the on-hit slow anymore. Glacial doesn't provide that on-hit slow to help you land your stun. So if you're having trouble landing your stun, or you know you need to chase them down with the movement speed, Deadman's is actually good again. It'd be really, really good if this item got another buff to maybe, you know, put it in the spotlight more over Thornmail, but you know, it's fine. Supportive items. So Knight's Vow is good again, but I haven't tested enough, and I haven't been finding a lot of games where I need to build it early. Like there used to be in season 10 a build where you just go, there was Shen Jungle at the time. It was the end of season 10. People would literally just go Cinderhulk into Knight's Vow. Lee Sin would do it, Shen would do it, and I would do it because it was so strong, right? You have Knight's Vow and you heal from the damage that your ally deals, plus your, you know, you redirect damage, so it's super strong. It's still good. It's not like it's suddenly bad. I just haven't found myself building it very much, and maybe should look to build it more if I have a super hyper carry like a Jinx or something. And of course, my other support is an enchanter, so they won't be building it, right? Redem is always good, and as long as you're good at using Redem, that item will be good. Ardent is only if your team is full AD and really needs the AP damage, and Mikhail's is really if they have, you know, something that you need to emergency CC cleanse somebody, right? And then onto these MR items. I just had a game before this video where it pains me to say that, you know, these items are still kind of bad. Like tanks are still kind of bad. Don't get me wrong. Like, you know, tanks are, you know, doing well in low elo, but in high elo, tanks just are melted instantly, and it barely matters, right? But the times you do want to build this stuff is Abyssal if your team and the enemy team is AP. Very specific. If they are AP and you are AP and you want to, you know, make your teammates deal more damage, like you have a Katarina versus Victor or whatever, and like that's most of the matchups, then Abyssal is good because it gets rid of their MR, and you know, that's great for AP. Frozen Heart, or not Frozen Heart, Force of Nature, really good if they have that DPS AP like a Cassio, or you know, something like a Fiddle ulti or something. It's really good versus a ton of AP, and it gives you the movement speed, so it's pretty effective. And Divine, I'm building a lot, but I said Divine. Spirit Visage I'm building a lot because if you have a Mythic that heals you, Moonstone, right? Moonstone, Divine, Gore, these Mythics heal you directly, and because they are healing you, it's more effective to go Visage with them because it increases that healing. Plus Seraphs on top of that. If you finish Seraphs and you have Visage and like Moon or Divine or whatever, you heal a lot. I mean, you heal a ton, right? One of the builds I'm going against whenever I see like a Zac and a mildly AP team is I'm going Divine, Visage, Seraphs, because you just heal so much. It's kind of ridiculous, right? And I haven't really updated this that much, but the only really aggressive item I'm finding myself building is, sure, like Gore Titanic is good. It works. Sunfire Bork used to work, but that's not really build. And because of lethal, like anytime I want to be aggressive, I'll go lethal. And if I'm going lethal, I'm not going anything that has attack speed. So these two are immediately getting tossed out. I have been building Sterix a little bit as a last item, but it's very rare that my games get to that point in the game. So hard to say. But I want to keep this video fast, even though it's already been way too long, but I'll just keep going, right? People are saying in the comments, oh, why are you leaving points in your abilities? Oh, you're trolling. It pains me so much. Oh, listen, I put 1 point in Q. You don't put points in Q because if you put it in early, the mana cost is higher. If the mana cost is higher, this lowers your clear speed. If your clear speed is lower, you get to do less stuff, whatever, blah, 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 right? You are always at full HP, so anytime that you are looking to put points in your queue, but you're farming, you don't do it because you don't get anything out of it. There's nothing to do. Wait until the team fight happens, then put the points in, right? Start at your buff, Q 4 seconds before it spawns, Q auto smack, until your mana is out, and then you just go to your next camp and you level E, right? Then you max E, right? Usually, you know, W has been gutted, so even though this kind of looks like, oh, you max W second, right? No, not really. Like, you know, you have to level E to here, right? And then you can't put 2 points of Q in at level 10, you know, because you'll put an R in at 11. So at best, you'd want to put 2 points of Q at 12 and 13, right? I have them at 13 and 14, but, you know, you want that 4-point Q as fast as possible, especially if you're facing AP, right? W got gutted a long time ago, so it's not as amazing anymore. Like, it only gives you 1% of armor per level, right? It's not amazing. So that's just something to keep in mind, right? You know, if you end up fighting early though, bam, you know, put that extra point in to Q at level 4 or 5 if you're fighting early and you need that healing. If you're not and you're permafarming, then bam, like level 7 is fine. Right, just remember that you can hold it because it'll help you clear faster. And so I'm going to go into also threats, synergies, current matchups that are rough. So these matchups suck. They're the hardest of the hard matchups, right? Vayne, I'm banning literally every game. LeBlanc is still nearly impossible. Same thing with Morgana, Anivia, Lilia, Kindred, and Kiana. I'm just not seeing Olaf at all. Like, he's just bad in the meta right now, so people aren't playing him. So I'm really not seeing a lot of Olaf to say what you should do if you are facing Olaf. Ideally, I'd look at the fact that he does, you know, 80 damage and true damage, and you know, he's not affected by he's not affected by Frozen Heart. So I'd probably end up just going like a Gore Drinker, Thornmail, Tabby's kind of build, right? But all of these are absolutely disgusting against Taric, whether it be permanent invisibility or ridiculous kiting ability and invading and just denying stuns and true damage, right? Just disgusting, right? You know, all these champions here, though, on the other hand, very easy for Taric. They all share the same thing as they walk up at you, they engage very obviously, then they just stand there autoing until they die, right? All these champs basically do that exact same thing. They jump on top of you, and then you just get to auto them for free until they die. I think the only one in this list that could maybe go into a different list is Gragas, because I've been finding a lot of Predator Gragas will actually kind of snowball his lanes pretty easily, and you can't really deal with him so hard because he doesn't just stand there, he kind of goes in and out of fights, so maybe he could go into minor, right? But other than that, you know, anyone who's just going to stand on top of you is going to be relatively easy to fight, just in general. I feel really bad for Ivern now. You can just go Moonstone, you can out-heal Ivern in fights. He needs a little bit of help. Viego should be in Tiny. Viego is probably one of the easiest matchups. He just Frozen Heart Rush. But what am I seeing a lot of? I'm still seeing probably a good amount of Graves. I'm seeing so much talent. Do I even have talent in here? I don't. Oh, I do. I'd say that's probably about where he goes, right? He's AD. You have to struggle with his invisibility and the fact that he can jump over walls, but you know, he does Q. His Q just goes right into a person, so he's just kind of a skill-based matchup. But overall in the meta, Taric is doing okay. I don't think he's doing like as bad as I thought he could be doing, but obviously he could be doing better. I feel kind of bad for support. Like, I thought support was going to be a lot better because of Glacial, but with this crazy enchanter meta, if you're facing like this Lulu or Nami or Janna in lane and they're safe and they're playing smart, then like laning is nearly impossible. But, you know, I guess live and learn. He's still a really good counter as a support to many tanks, Blitzcrank, Nautilus, Thresh, whatever, right? But yeah. What else would I got? Oh, you're already on the YouTube, so I don't have to tell you that. We've got a spreadsheet, Discord, Twitch, Twitter. I try to keep the spreadsheet up to date. Let's see what it looks like. It's going to look basically like what you just saw earlier. If you've never seen this, feel free to take a look. It's basically the same thing as the Mythics that I have. So, yeah, I think that's about it. That should really be about it. That's it's kind of the current state, you know. TLDR came to the bottom of the video, and you know, what do I get out of this? If you're new, do PTA instead of lethal, and also don't get baited by Fimble because Seraph is better, right? Other than that, you heard it all. So have a nice have a nice night. Happy holidays, since this will be on a. I'll probably upload this on Christmas. So, yeah. Good luck with the Taric jungle, people, and see ya.